your sword?
Oh, not this sword. Son, let me tell you a story.
Now we'll be talking about ancient Egypt's weapons and armor. The 9 weapons that the Egyptians used were bronze-tipped spear and shield, javelin, battle axes, mace axe, short swords, khopesh, composite bows, chariots, and scale armor. The materials they used on these weapons included copper, bronze, wood, leather, iron, stone, bricks, and others. During Egypt's Old and Middle Kingdom, soldiers barely wore armor. After the Old and Middle Kingdom, only professionals started wearing armor made of cowhide and scale armors, rather than those normal people like farmers or merchants who were just told on the spot to go fight and were handed a sword. Horses were also wearing armor made of bronze, iron, steel, rawhide, leather, cuirbali, seeds, horn, and Pygmalion scales.
As Egypt expanded into the southern side of Africa, east towards the Middle East, and as they slowly started to build their empire, they did encounter a lot of enemies, a lot of kingdoms that wanted to snatch their rule or take the throne. It was a challenging time for them. First, one of the most important enemies were the Hyksos. They were one of the original enemies during the Middle Kingdom to New Kingdom, and they led 2 deadly invasion campaigns both in the New Kingdom period. They were repelled, but yeah, they caused a lot of damage, and they usually tried to sprout insurrection among the Egyptian ranks. On top of that, there were the Tehenu, or another name Libyans, which you're probably familiar with. They invaded mostly from the south. They originated from mid-Africa, and they usually were much weaker and were routinely defeated by the pharaohs. They were also quite annoying. So there's this 2-pronged attack starting from the Hyksos at the top and the Tehenu in the south. Towards the northeast, I'd say the Hittites also did cause quite a bit of problems, but as you've heard in your textbook, Ramses the Great tried to repel them, and he eventually did. Lastly, there are the Sea People. Not much is known about these guys. They don't know their motives. We don't know where they originated or really what they did. But some of the things we do know is that A, they did conquer the Hittites, which was quite a big achievement considering the Hittites' technological capability. They caused many damages to the Egyptian population and to the empire itself. It was quite a rough time, and that severely weakened the Egyptian empire. They did eventually, they were repelled. And lastly, the fall of Egypt, as it's considered, was caused by the big bad Persians, which, due to their technological superiority and how they were just so dominant in Mesopotamia, near the Indus Valley, and eventually towards Egypt, they did finish the Egyptian empire. So, a variety of enemies, and you will hear about more specific battles and skirmishes in a later topic during the PBL.
The first major important war I'll be talking about would be the Hyksos and their invasion of Egypt during the Middle Kingdom. Considering the pharaoh's political power was declining heavily, using previously owned enclaves, they invaded ancient Egypt, which cemented the fall of the 13th dynasty, which was in rule at the time. The conflict that took place was at the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, and was a war between the government and the invading Hyksos, a conflict that lasted approximately 25 years. Another important battle would be the Battle of Kadesh. This battle was fought between the Egyptian pharaoh King Ramses and Muwatalli, who was king of the Hittites at the time. The battle took place around the town of Kadesh, hereby giving it its name. It was the first to be documented ever, and it was the last major battle to take place within the Bronze Age. It was also part of a much larger war with the Hittites, which is renowned for constantly ending in stalemate. Both sides constantly at war, but none being able to match or defeat the other. The unification of Lower and Upper Egypt is extremely important, which forms the basis for the rise of other Egyptian dynasties, Egyptian conquest, Egyptian trade, almost everything. Originally, before the Old Kingdom, there were 2 separate kingdoms known as Lower and Upper Egypt, each having their own separate thrones. However, Pharaoh Menes wanted to unite all of Egypt into a single nation, which meant a massive war. The battle stretched all across Egypt, And at the very end, the pharaoh was successful, starting the first dynasty under the rule of Pharaoh Menes. Now, this last battle is extraordinarily important, considering it is the battle that many religious events are based off. The most prominent being Armageddon, an important event in Christianity. The battle itself was fought between a coalition of forces which were backed by the king of Kadesh, and it was fought in the Middle East, with Egyptian forces trying to take a city and cement their control in the area. The king of Kadesh blocked two likely routes with troops that Thutmose III, the Egyptian pharaoh at the time, would likely use to take the city. However, Thutmose III is documented to have taken the third most dangerous path, stating that if his own commanders thought that it was unpredictable, his enemy would never see it coming. The ploy was successful. Thutmose led through it, did a siege, and it was extremely successful, and he took the city. The king of Kadesh escaped, but after taking that, Egyptian control was cemented, and that was the height of the Egyptian empire, when the Egyptians were at their most powerful.
Egypt's strategies. What can I say about them? They use different kinds of spears, layers, different types of shields, light and heavy. So what I mean by different types of layers, if they were in a large army, and they would have one layer with spears and heavy shields, another with swords and light shields, just etc. It would keep alternating back and forth, okay? And as time went on, so did their strategies. In New Egypt, they changed their strategy by using chariots after the Hittites attacked them and used them. So Egypt stole their idea, call it their own, and they use it in battle more often, as you can see by the drawing over there. Afterwards, they started using stationary places to fight, like an archer tower or something where you could just be high up and start shooting people downwards. And they never took the initiative unless they were fully prepared. So what do I mean by that? Unless they were full on armor, swords, soldiers, all that good stuff, they would take the initiative. But either way, if they didn't or were just, hey, I don't want to do it, man, let's just wait for them, they were always passive and counterattacked.
And that's the story of how the mighty Egyptian empire fell. Thanks for watching!
An old blade from when I was still a young warrior. I used this blade to fight the Hyksos in Lower Egypt, where we drove them out of the village they captured.
Shut up, Grandpa! So, it's this big, okay, you see that? It's not like this big. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, cut that pause off because I forgot. Sorry it's long. Also, this is another one.